Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. In this video, we'll be discussing doing my Rings of Prime versus the actual lore of Tolkien. So let's get into it right away. As usual, I have a separate companion video where I view the actual episode on its own merits and don't talk about the differences with the lore. Although I will say, if Amazon has a right to something in that video and think choosing what was in the rights that they have to is better than their choice, I'll mention that. But I'm not going to slam the show for lore deviances in that video because I just want to review the show for the show. Okay. And you know, my points of interest in this video are centered at spots where I captured a referential image to show you. There are other points of discussion in the episode where you can argue the lore. Like the whole Hartford thing, I'm just picking particular points to make particular points, and when I make those points, I'm saying that had they maybe tried to comply more with that lore, which yeah, they might not have the rights to, but they could have asked, they would have been better off. That's what I mean by this video. Okay. And again, final caveat: Amazon has to make up chunks of this stuff because they don't have rights to certain parts of it. Right. Okay. On to the field of battle. So, first slide up. This is early in the episode. Basically, you can see that I during the episode when I'm taking clips for this particular video, I leave the subtitles on, and I mark that particular point with the subtitle as my reference. So, it's not poison. It's that you're concerned. This is when they're on the ship. Galadriel wakes up and Halbrand brings her a meal. Just to make it a minor point, elves are highly resistant to any sort of poisoning. It takes an absurd amount of alcohol to get them drunk, for example. There's a lot of more in the lore with regards to elves being not killable by anything that's not like an act of power or murder. Tolkien went back and forth on how far to take that in his life, but gist of it is elves are resistant to poison to a great degree. And if this was a real Galadriel without power, she probably would have zero concern of being poisoned. Let's go on to the second slide. Strange tides indeed. That's Elendil there. In the lore, Elendil's father is the Lord of the Anduni, a province of Numenor on its western shore. The men of Anduni remain loyal to the Valar and friends to the elves, which is pointed out in this episode, so I'll give them credit for that. They were known as the Faithful. They remained in communication with the elves and groups of the Faithful on the mainland. I'm going to bring this point up again because that's a change in the show. Elendil should know who Galadriel is. Even if our story... Well, meaning in the lore, Elendil should know who Galadriel is. Even if our story is completely different in the crap show... Now I'm talking about the show. Okay, this is where I think they would have better go with the lore. Even if our story is different in the crap show, she's still thousands of years old, world famous, and a notable person among nobility. Elendil, if they had gone with the lore and not changed his nature here, which I'll have to get to later, should know who Galadriel is. She's world famous, you know. Plus, technically, they're distant cousins. You know, although that's just me bringing up a technical point, not so much for the show. And of course, we find out later that Elendil's not among nobility in the show. This is when they arrive, they were taken ashore on the boat and they're arriving in Numenor. Since when did men like me build kingdoms such as this? In the lore, by the time of the sinking of Numenor, there were Numenorian fortresses, settlements, cities, and colonies all across the mainland. For example, the Faithful have found the city of Pelargir, and the Kingsmen had found the country of Umbar. Pelargir was part of Gondor in the time of the Third Age and Return of the King. It's one of the cities that Aragorn relieved in the lore anyway. And Umbar remained an enemy of Gondor even into the Third Age. Let's go to slide number 4. In time, they broke off all contact. As I have mentioned, in the lore, Numenorians had settlements and regular contact with Middle-earth right up until the time of the sinking of Numenor. Also, the Edain of the Anduni maintained contact with the elves, albeit secretly. In fact, that's how Elendil got to Palantiri. Inadvertently added a new slide, so let's delete that, buddy. We'll go on this one. Captain, the Queen region is occupied. This is when Elendil is taking Halbrand and Galadriel to the Queen. Now, note in the show, we later learn that Tar Palantir is in fact alive, but he has been deposed. So Tarmiriel is the Queen Regent ruling for her father. In the lore, Tamriel was never Queen Regent or even the Queen of Numenor. Numenor has, in fact, had queens, good and bad. However, when Tar Palantir died and Tamriel is set to become the queen, her cousin Pharazôn forced her to marry him, then declared himself king, usurping the throne. Now, I think this is one of the more preposterous scenes in the episode, where Tamriel tells Galadriel to name thyself. Now, in the lore, Numenorians maintain extensive contact with the mainland. They certainly would know who Galadriel was, especially given that Tamriel, like her father, wants to return all of Numenor to the ways of the faithful. It's highly likely that an expansive, active kingdom like Numenor would have had the knowledge of those who govern on the mainland, even in this show. Well, even both in the lore and the show. And they certainly would know who Gil-galad, Elrond, Galadriel, and Celeborn were in the lore. Now, in the context of the show, and even in its isolation, I find it preposterous that the Numenorians would not maintain some kind of sort of intelligence gathering on the mainland and know who the elven powers and human powers are there. This is when Galadriel and Halbrand are standing before the queen after she stopped them from bowing. And Galadriel goes, "It is because of the elves that you would give this island." In the lore, no, it's not because of the elves that the Edain would get granted Numenor. Galadriel literally states the actual lore about 5 to 10 minutes later, when she's talking to Elendil and Andony. Because the Edain fought with the elves against Morgoth and remained loyal to the Valar created the island of Elena for them. Literally, Olmo raised it from the sea. Olmo is the Valar who rules the sea. Elros followed the Star of Eärendil to Elena, which is the island, and found the kingdom of Numenor there in Second Age 32. Elros is Elrond's brother, and that's one of the lore elements that Galadriel talked about later. And to the show's credit, that was the first example of contextual exposition ever. When we were looking at the picture of Elrond and Elros, and Elros making choices to have Elven, and Galadriel explained who Elros was. That was the first good example of exposition in this entire show. Anyway, sorry, I got to save that for the review. Sorry. So let's go to slide number 8. Tamriel. Okay, so this is now. This is where on the bottom they seek to imprison the mighty commander of the armies. That's not what I'm going to mention here. This is the picture of, that's, on the left is Tamriel, on the right is Pharazôn, okay? Their fathers are brothers, okay? They're first cousins. Tamriel was born in Second Age 3117. Pharazôn was born in Second Age 3118. Apparently this, I'm guessing they decided to make Pharazôn look much older, and he looks flabby and out of shape. Nothing like he's supposed to be in the lore. In the lore, Pharazôn was considered a throwback to the Edain of old in terms of height and athletic ability. He's supposed to be like 6'5 plus, like Elendil is supposed to be really tall. He was considered a great guy and seemed like he might actually help bridge the gap between the Kingsman and the Faithful. He spent a lot of time on the mainland among the Numenorians and the elves and fighting Sauron, among other things. Okay, he started to go bad when he returned from the mainland several years before Tar Palantir's death. He used his fame, charisma, and wealth to gain great favor with the people of Numenos, which is the capital city of Numenor, which is where they are now. And given that his father was the leader of the Kingsmen, this aided him greatly when he made his move to usurp the throne. Okay, and this is where we learn that Tar Palantir has been deposed. So we dare not invite your father's cloud back overhead. In the lore, Tamriel intended to continue her father's plan to return to the ways of the Valar and friendship with the elves. So I'm not going to comment on the show plot. Okay, now we go to the next scene. Right after that, tell me about this captain. In the lore, Tamriel and Pharazôn certainly would know who Elendil is. Pharazôn says that Elendil was originally of a noble line, but is now a captain in the sea service. The show basically decided Elendil is no longer the heir to Andony, or maybe even eliminate that whole connection to his family, which is horrible because in the lore, this is literally Elendil's father, Amandil, was the Lord of Andony, and he suspected, based he was having dreams, if I remember correctly, that something bad was going to happen to people, to Elena and Numenor and its people. So he told his son Elendil, "You and your family, you get all of our people, all the faithful you can, aboard some ships and sail away from Numenor to the sort of like southwest or whatever. I don't remember the direction. Okay." And I'm going to take this ship and I want to do my duty. And you hear me tearing up a little, boss. This stuff like this is like amazing about Tolkien. Amandil knew he was gonna die for what he did. Okay, but he said, I have to do this. It's my duty. And he sailed to Valinor, which was forbidden, to warn the Valar about what was going on in Numenor and to ask for their help, just like his ancestor Irindil did. Okay, and he knew he was gonna die, and he was never heard from again in the lore, but he knew what he had to do. Now, it's indicated in the lore that Eru sunk Numenor, but that the Valar saved the faithful on the ships. So I interpret that as Amandil's sacrifice was honored. A lot of people in the fandom do. Sorry for getting a little emotional. This shit show just gets to me a lot. It just upsets me when they change stuff for stupid reasons. The faithful literally survived because Amandil was the Lord of Andoni, Elendil was his heir, and they had a place they could prepare. Now, there is something in the show, I only talk about as it relates to the lore, where Elendil is insistent that his son learn to be a seaman and all that. That could be related to Elendil maybe having this plot going on to take the faithful away from Numenor. If they go that way, I'll be happy. That's one plot line I would be happy about, that they retained from the lore. Right? So let's go on to slide number 11. This is when we first see Isildur, who's the center screen there as a cadet. Isildur was born in Second Age 3209. Numenor sunk in Second Age 3319. In the lore, he was older and more accomplished. That's the only point I'm making here. Okay. Now we get to slide 12, which is Isildur's sister. In the lore, there is no mention of Elendil having a daughter, nor does Tolkien say he doesn't have a daughter. Tolkien was detailed enough, however, to put if he did have a daughter, even he would have put her in genealogies, even if that was the only mention. If he never did anything in the lore, he would put her there, or he would say unnamed daughter, like or whatever. Now I have no objection to adding a character like this, so long as her actions do not affect anything in the lore, meaning she doesn't do something that Isildur does or Elendil does or whatever, And if she's helping them do it, I'd be fine with that. If she's doing something, that bolsters their action, like maybe, like when Isildur in the lore goes to steal the seedling of Nimloth, maybe she distracts the guards or something. That I'd be okay with that change in the show, because it doesn't change what Isildur did. It just adds to the dramatic tension. Okay, but my understanding is the reason Isildur is so young and the reason she exists is one or both of them will be having romances with Pharazôn's children. That makes no sense in the lore. They were the king's men and the faithful really didn't associate. Okay. At the point of the time of the Sinking Numenor, outside of Andoni, the faithful were being persecuted by the king's men. Okay. So let's go to our next slide. And this one bugs me more than almost anything in this stupid fucking show. But I know I'll lose points for that one. So, Arondir is speaking Quenya. Arondir, according to everything we've been told, I could be wrong on this, okay? If I am, let me know. But he's a Sylvan elf. Why is he speaking Quenya? Sure, he probably knows it. He's hundreds, if not thousands of years old. He basically, I guess they erased the knowledge of all the other elven languages, meaning that all the elves only speak Quenya. In the lore, there are historical reasons why Sylvan elves spoke Sylvan, as Tolkien himself identified it, or as Legolas called it in the books, the woodland tongue. I'm grossly oversimplifying, but basically, all the elves spoke one language at first, the primitive Quendan, okay, that you see on the little diagram there. Then, as they spread into kindreds, the tongue started to diverge, okay? So, again, grossly oversimplifying, okay? The elves were originally one sort of small community, and as they increased in population, they divided into kindreds, okay? And the Valar said to the elves, okay, it's time for you guys to come to Valinor. You've helped us educate the men who've awoken. We're going to leave Middle-earth for them, and you can come to the Undying Lands, which are unchanging, so you can deal with your mortality better. That sundered the elves into two groups right away. The Avari, who are the dark elves, so to speak, in Tolkien terms, and the Qualardi, I don't remember the name, the elves who started the trip to Valinor, okay? And right, and the Avari developed their own variant tongues, right, based on their from primitive Quendan, their own languages, right. Then the next great divide happened at the shore. The Teleri were the seamen of the elves. They built boats. The Vanyar and the Noldor went overseas almost completely. Okay? In fact, in a sense, any elf who remained was a Teleri, even if they weren't a Teleri, so to speak, by the way it's described. So once the Vanyar and Noldor were overseas, their language further evolved into Quenya, which is considered High Elven. Okay, and obviously there's dialects for the two families of elves. Okay, the Teleri split into two groups. Some who went overseas, and they would speak Common Teleri and Quenya, like the elves over there, and the ones who stayed, by the two brothers who were the kings of the Teleri. Okay, now those Teleri groups, the ones who stayed, further subdivided out into the Sindarin elves, who Celeborn is a Sindarin elf. In the final version of it, there's under Iruthingol, who married Milian the Maya. Although Iruthingol was the only Teleri elf who never saw Valinor, who, because he spent 100 years with Milian before he even became the king of the non-Noldor elves, basically, he was elevated by her presence, and he married her, obviously, right? So that's your Sindarin, right? And then you see the Valinorian Teleri speak Common Teleri as well as Quenya. You see on the map there. And then the non-Sindarin elves became the Nandor and the Sylvan elves. The Sylvans are Legolas' ancestors. Arandri is supposed to be a Sylvan elf, and he speaks Sylvan. There's a historic reason for all of that, and I understand they want to simplify it for people. I get that, but honestly, it bugs me. Changes like that bug me because, they could have just had two languages. They could have Sylvan and Quenya, and I would have been kind of okay. But there's a historical, cultural reason that the elves of the Sylvan elves are different than other elven groups. Right? And finally, so the caption says, "We're evil, will not only endure but thrive." Apparently, Xena discovers that the meaning of the symbol is a map. She finds this out from a record obtained by a Númenórean spy that Sauron's secret master plan is to basically establish Mordor. Keep it simple. In the lore, Mordor was established in Second Age 1000. The 9 rings for men and the 7 for the dwarves were forged in Second Age 1500. The 3 elven rings were forged in Second Age 1590. Sauron forged the 1 ring in Second Age around Second Age 1600. Númenor sunk in Second Age 3309. That pretty much says everything needs to be said there. Okay. So, I honestly expected less to discuss in this video. I figured I'd wind up with a 10-minute video when I first watched the episode. But upon rewatching it and, the skim through to get my context, there was just so much crap. The show just keeps adding in elements when we're better to have started with a couple elements and develop them and add more at the end. Honestly, and this has to do with the video, but just as a hypothetical, imagine if Meteor Man's arrival and the Harfrey introduction was at the end of season 1. You have your negative stinger with maybe Sauron being revealed or whatever, and then you have your positive, your mystery stinger with Meteor Man crashing and then seeing Nori climb over and help him out of the thing, and that's your first sight of the Harfoots. That would have, and you could have all these Harfoot scenes, which are just making them like crap people, to develop the other plots more. But anyway, I'm doing these lore comparison videos. It makes me angry and sad. I'm angry because of the wasted opportunities, and sad because the works of Tolkien are being salted so much. So until next week, read Tolkien's actual work, watch the 1970s animated films, and Peter Jackson's films from around the year 2000. Comment down below if you have any questions for me about this video. Share if you like it, like if you like it, dislike if you don't. Please share my video if you can, if you enjoyed it. My name is Matt. This has been Unbearable 73, although I feel like Unbearable 7000. Anyway, or Unbearable stroked out, I should say. Anyway, have a nice day. Hopefully enjoy some football today and tomorrow. I am out of here.